Hello. Good evening, family. Okay. This is the Journey 2020, and we are just so pleased that you've chosen to join us this Friday evening.
Seem to have caught you off guard.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I just want to say happy Groundation Day to you. Okay. And welcome to the family, both here. And I'll explain groundation in a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, trust me, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause-
But I'd like to first um, introduce myself, and I'm Dr. John Robertson, psychologist in private practice here in sunny Orlando. And I hope wherever you are that you're having as good a weather as we are here. And I'm here along with my intrepid co-host, Mr. Charles Morris.
Well, thank you, Dr. Robertson.
I see you had to bounce on one of those syllables.
No, because I was trying to say, what is it that you said? You were saying welcome, happy
Oh,
something.
groundation.
Groundation.
Yes.
Okay. You're gonna explain to us what that is?
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I mean later on you're gonna explain to us.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. We'll definitely do that.
Okay. Okay.
But we ought to introduce our guest.
Because when you started, it's almost like you're going to say happy grounds. Yeah. I was like, okay, but winter's over, so, but we're into spring. Definitely for people, winter has passed us now.
Right.
Officially, winter's gone in Florida. There's no more 40 degrees, no more 50 degrees. We're now in, so we're into spring now. But anyway, I'm Charles Morris. Welcome to the Journey 2020. Happy, and hope everyone had a very happy Easter. And as you say, we're now officially into spring as far as the temperature and everything. I was just thinking today that I love this winter. This was what I called the perfect winter.
That's what my wife was saying.
It was
too, yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
Mainly because the fishing was great.
Okay. And now I'm jealous. I am jealous.
Yeah, it was perfect. I mean, we had a few cold, but not really. As long as the temperatures.
Right.
I mean for Florida, because people in Florida lose their mind once it dropped below 60.
Right.
But
Exactly.
because I lived up north in Maine and Boston and all that,
So you knew what cold
right.
was.
So
Okay.
in the 40s is good for me, but in the because it warms up.
Yeah,
Here in Florida.
right.
And when the tourists come here, they don't realize that it gets cold here. It
Right.
just doesn't stay cold long. It just stay cold for like a day or two, then it's back up. We're off topic now, but we'll say this: when I was up north, I will never forget when it got up to 30 degrees. It was a heat wave, and I went outside and I had on this little light jacket, and I was like, "Oh, this feels so good." I never knew 30 degrees could feel so good, and it was a wonderful thing.
Charles, I know exactly what you mean because after living in Utica, New York for many years, that those 30 degrees felt like it was about 70.
Right.
Once you got into the sun. Now, if you were out of the sun,
Right.
you'd feel those 30 degrees.
Right.
But with a little sunshine, wonderful.
Oh yeah.
We ought to introduce our guests.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, we're really pleased to have one of my favorite reverends. Okay. I want to call you Doctor, Reverend Doctor.
I've heard that so many times.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
It's starting to put a buzz on me.
Well, I'm hoping that it grows on you.
It's starting
Exactly.
to not just grow on me, it's starting to kind of direct me in a direction that
Well,
I have been wanting to.
That's
So,
precisely what I mean. Okay.
Thank you, speaker.
All right. And again, to those of you who have watched the Journey 2020 before, this is Reverend Gail Gardner, and Reverend Gardner is going to talk to us tonight about something that in our community at times we have a lot of trouble talking about,
Yes.
but something that Charles and I felt was very important. And as we've had you on before, we want to talk about some of the issues surrounding domestic violence, sexual assault and the mental health,
Yes.
primarily of our women, but also these subject matters also affect our entire community.
Yes.
So, Reverend Gardner, let me ask you firstly. I remember back in the day, it was thought that as black folks, that we didn't have to deal with problems of domestic violence or of sexual assault. And have things changed? Have we become more aware, or have we become more vulnerable to those issues?
Let me first say that thank you for having me. And
Anytime.
this is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And I believe that not just for a month, but I attack this issue and domestic violence with mental health all year long, every month. So I'm always feeling quite on top of that topic. We kept that quiet. And I just left the conference where I was on the panel, and I said to them, and I say it all over, that we were good in our homes, especially people of color, and that means not only African American but also Hispanic, Haitian homes, Jamaican homes, Asian homes. You know, the one thing is that we always say, well, what goes on in this house stays in this house.
Yeah.
So it's never that it's gotten so different. And if you notice, we're hearing more and more on the news because people are losing their lives over it. I don't think it has gone that. I looked at the statistics. It's one in four women and 1 in 6 men have been sexually abused.
1 in 4 women. Okay.
And I think it's 1 in 6 women and 1 in 33 men will be sexually abused. You know, so it's with domestic violence, the statistics are hard to gather because with sexual abuse, it might be a quiet thing, but eventually it comes out in some cases. With domestic violence, it has no economic barriers. No one who's in the professional field wants anyone to know that they are dealing with domestic violence in their home. And so it's not. It doesn't have any color line, any economic line. It doesn't have any of that. The difference is, as much as they don't want to report it, people will generally report that outside of socioeconomic lines when it comes to poor families.
So
Poor families will not report it as much because of the dynamics. It's like norm. The other economic and status and races they don't have the cops pulling up in front of their house. That's out. And it'll go on for years. But when they do get out of it, then they'll talk about it and they'll go for some counseling.
Okay.
We do not do the reporting, and we definitely don't do the counseling. So what goes on in our house stays in our house is the biggest myth and lie, because then we wear all that baggage that comes with that over a period of years of the prevalence of it. You know, the chronic. Chronically mentally ill or what's going on deep inside, suppression of that keeps us from making the stand. So that's what I read in the research, and that's what I've observed. And I look at my own life. I'm a survivor of all three. Okay. So it's not that I'm the measuring yard. I've actually done my homework and still doing it, still learning, and talking to people who come into my office. I really think that, I believe that if we can talk about it, that's the first line of defense, is disclosure to healing, is talking about it, because that's what we didn't do. We may not report it, but only 18% of domestic violence is reported. And that's 18% of everybody. So you know that if it's 18% of everybody, then you know we're not reporting it at all. Then ours are probably 1% or 0.5%. You know, because we always have a large disparity.
Right. We're always
We either way up here or we way down here.
Right.
So it's like, okay, where do we fall in this? So it's really a difficult situation at this point, but there's a pattern. And if we approach it like that, we'll see it.
Now, I know that one of the if you want to call it the cultural rules, if you want to call it, is that what happens in this house stays in this house. That's one factor I know that feeds into not reporting. But are there some other factors that you found that also add into not reporting?
Yes. I'm going to say the African American church and the African American people because I am, but from statistics and who I've spoken with in Latino, are also the same thing. That community, that church community, even if you're not a part of the church, but you have that background, you have a sense of God in your family because you were raised with grandma
you were raised up in the church.
Yeah, you raised up, and even if you stop going, and your kids, you only go, Easter time. The point is you have some sense of God. So there was some things you just didn't do. So going to, one of the things that keep us from reporting is, back in the day, and pastors now are starting to get the message, the ones I've talked to, back in the day, when you came to the pastor and told him you were dealing with domestic violence, or however way you wanted to put it, first of all, they didn't want to have, men have a thing about interfering in another man's business.
Now wait a minute. Now, see, you're stepping on some toes now.
You know it's right
okay.
now.
But go ahead.
Another man, oh no, I can't get in this man's business. That's his home, that's his business, and that's where it was. So, am I right? So pastors didn't do it, and they would send them back home.
That's some truth to that, but also it was like that among friends.
Yes, definitely.
Because now there's a line that you didn't cross.
That's right.
Because sometimes you tried to pull the brother aside.
Yes.
And you tried to put something in his ear and hope that he would hear what you were saying and would understand it. But it was like you didn't want to disrespect the guy.
That's right.
Because that's his home. And there's a
right.
line that you didn't cross because that's his home.
Yes.
And how dare you do
that's
that
right.
out of the respect of understanding that's his house.
That's right. And let me give my pastor brothers on this. When you have, and this is why we're looking now at doing some statistics. I just talked to someone today about doing the survey online. Remember the survey that Dr. Kyle Robinson did for us? Well, I talked to somebody today about putting that survey online so that different churches can take that, so we can get some numbers and some thought and feedback. The one thing that I have to say to the pastors is that their hands are really tied a lot of times too. And when you're talking about having a room full of 300 and 400 people that every other person got the same issue, and it has not been addressed,
right?
And whatever goes on in the house, I mean, you're overwhelmed, and they go home with this.
Right.
So
there's a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. One is that I recently, and I wouldn't say hi, and I just say Nita because she's watching. And a friend of mine that I grew up with hadn't seen her or talked to her since the 70s. I'm not going to give away, but haven't seen her talk to her since the 70s. And knowing where we came from, as far as our neighborhood, and as you get older, you realize how dysfunctional we were. You don't realize.
It's like finding out that you was poor 30 years later. We were poor.
Right. Like, not to get, but I didn't know that my father wasn't a father.
Yeah.
Because I saw him.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that fathers show up at basketball games.
Yeah.
So it's just little things like that. So as I get older, as we get older, then we now talk among friends, and then as we're in this place now where we talk about why so many died, so many in jail, why this, why that, blah, blah, blah. Talking to her, and I've just had a deep conversation with her today, and she was, and I think she was married twice, and the abuse, and I'm trying to get, and I may ask her to reach out to you, Dr. Robertson, is because she's trying to justify him.
Yes.
And and it's almost like I almost yelled at her because I'm trying to say, you're trying to justify this sick guy who's mental, who has all these issues, and trying to find rhyme and reason when there's no rhyme and reason in his madness. Because you think, because he says, I love you, and I'm trying to say, if this is how he know how to love you, you're trying to find something in it where you go, something good, not in the sense that it sounds, but if he's beating you, if he's throwing you out in the snow with your babies because he want to bring somebody else in, or this, all these other reasons, all these things, and you're trying to go, I don't understand because he says he loves me. And I'm saying, if that's how he knows how to love you, you have to, because she keep looking inward at herself, and it's not you. And she keeps talking about the abuse, which I understood because of how she was treated in school, because she was abused in school. They nicknamed her this. They told her she was ugly and she was this. And I said, no, you wasn't ugly. But she's so used to all of this. And it's like, I feel so bad because she's keep looking outward when she needs to look inward in her circle. And for the people she has led into her lives, and trying to find justification in madness in the guy. So, and she's listening now.
And let me say,
watching now.
Let me say this. On my timeline, I put something there a couple of days ago, but I generally say this to people too. We can measure who we are by the people we're with.
Right, exactly.
You see, if I got this guy in my life, and generally, if they see in you something that's less than who they are, then they're going to do like the chicken that's sick. They're going to pick at you. Now, let me back up too, because see, I also know that my brother has had some, talking about this gentleman, that he's been a victim somewhere too. So he's not sick mentally that caused him to be domestic violence as a rule. What it is, he's chosen to be that because he's learned how to do that. That's a learned behavior.
Right. And see, what I really didn't say to her, and what I hope she's listening now, is that she asked the question, why did he keep coming back? And what she don't understand was, because of you. I can be this way because one, I know I can trust you. I know that you're gonna be there. I know that you're a good person, and I get through all my madness that I express. I know you're gonna be there. So you're dependable. So why wouldn't I come back to you? Because you allow me to be all messed up, and you still here.
And the part, like I said, our African American men, if we go back, and I'm reading a report by a sociologist, and it made sense. And Dr. Al Miles wrote what pastors can do about domestic violence. And I was listening to a webinar with him, and I've got his book. And one thing is that he says, if we look back in the history of our men, they're taught to be aggressive. They're taught that boys don't cry. They've got all these things they've been taught, and they actually been fallacies. So now they go out into the world, and they've got what is it? Well, we all are suffering in some way at some point with discrimination. We come from a pattern of slavery. There's some things that have been embedded and brought up through the ranks. And what happens now, here I am, and the only thing I know is my dad said boys don't cry if he was home. My mom, you know, she can only teach me what a son is supposed to be from a mother's perspective. And there's just other things that go like this. So now we go into a relationship with a young lady. I was telling somebody the other day, if your son, and I have one who was raised by a single parent, me, there's some things they're not going to know. Only a man can teach them. I used to wouldn't say that, but I've learned that.
Okay.
You understand?
Well, yeah. Actually, remember we did the workshop on that.
Right.
And only by the
Yeah.
grace of God is I have not been to the jailhouse or the crack house about him, you know. But there's some issues he has that I know that if his father was playing that role in his life,
Right.
he would not have those issues today,
Right.
and it would not have taken him long to learn some others.
Right.
So with all of that, here we go into a relationship. We already got baggage, and we've got somebody who's willing to accept our baggage. And we have been a victim of our own things. So now we got victims within victims.
Right.
Right.
You know what's funny? This is kind of like off-topic show in the show again.
Okay.
Talking to a friend and went into which the women did this. When we talk, we would understand this, right? So when women don't understand just who we are, in the sense to say that I'm a warrior first. When you start having that conversation, they don't know it, you know. But in the conversation that we are warriors first, and we are meant to go out and do this, blah blah. Just who we are naturally. Now there's some levels of that from person to person. But when you start talking about the men ego and how we are and the purpose and how a man sees a woman in his life and the whole thing of who she is and how he looks to her to identify himself, all that, it varies from person to person. So you try to have that conversation. So when I was sitting there talking to her, it was so funny because I said, well, you know your job is to suit me up. You know your job is to build, it is to help me with my ego. So when I walk out in the morning, I got an S on my chest, a cape on my back. That's what your job is. Of course, now she go back to the girlfriend, call me up the next night. Are you an Israelite? You know the guys who walk around with the red.
12 tribes of Israel.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like,
Oh my.
because there's just some of the simple things, and for me it's simple. No. But
I hear you.
But there's certain things that who we are.
Yes.
And it's like, if you're not taught some of the just little things, because the perception I think that women have of who we are, it's just so amazing sometimes.
Well, let me get this, because when you say that you're the warrior, and that's how we raise. Now, a warrior it also hunts. Right. So if the warrior is hunting and he's the aggressor, or the one that's looking for that woman,
we're talking about two different things.
Okay, but I'm going to pull it back in.
Right. Okay.
So if he's looking for that person and he's not, but he finds someone that is willing to put up with his stuff, then that's how he's attracted. But he's not satisfied because he didn't have a chance to go do the hunting. So
no, we're talking about two different things.
Okay.
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 All right. What I'm talking about is just who I am. Maybe you can help me, Dr. Evans.
Okay.
Because
we went real over there somewhere.
Because
Go ahead.
What I'm trying to say is, let me start it this way. Generally, when I try to have this conversation, I say, if you want to understand a lot of things about who we are as people, just go back to the garden.
Of course.
And in the garden, there's Adam and Eve. And no matter what takes place, is who I am, a guy and a girl. And now we have evolved into all these other things in which we have put forth where we place it in our lives. But if you ever want to deal with who we are, you have to start with, I'm a guy and you're a girl. And that's all it is. But it's these other things in which we have placed in our lives that we have problems with, because now it's a precedence over all these other things in which should be first, our relationship and who we are to each other.
I hear you. Now, how does that relate to domestic violence?
A lot of it has to do with, one, I still believe that a lot of people, whether it's me dealing with you, I got to understand what your spirit is. And I also got to see where you are spiritually. Okay, let me finish. Okay.
Because they found that not to be true.
No,
it's a learned behavior.
I didn't finish.
Okay. Yes, sir. I'm just, because I'm biting at the bit here. I'm going,
No. Again, you have to look at who I am. And when I say look at who I am, you got to get to know me. Because you don't know from where I came. And you don't know where I've been or what to do with my anger and my frustration, because when I say I'm a warrior, you don't know where that is in my life. Because if I'm aggressive, this and that and this, and if I think, just like I was talking about my friend with the aggressiveness, and if I think that is how I can identify myself, then you need to look at yourself and look at who you have let into your heart. Because I may be a nutcase.
Okay, now this is the point.
Okay.
I hear you, and that's true if I'm just talking about just somebody that I need to get to know someone. I need to get to know, and then, but I also have my own baggage and they have theirs. I got to get to know. But the point is that no matter what warrior he is, he has no business striking me.
But
let me
that's not the case,
okay,
though.
Go ahead,
No. But see, that's what I'm saying. Because when people get married, he then all of a sudden, or she, when all of a sudden, they just didn't become that way after they got married. There was signs and this and that and this. I'm pretty sure they got hit before they got married. Okay, so what I'm saying is he just then all of a sudden start hitting on her. And if I hit you, then what does that tell you?
This is what I know. You're right, but listen to this. The other side of that is that we are with the people we're with by how we think about ourselves. So because the way she thinks about herself, she don't see what you.
No, I got that.
Exactly.
But and again, this is what I always say. I have the right to be a knucklehead. You don't have the right to take that away from me.
If that's what you feel.
No, what I'm saying is, no. You can make a choice whether or not I'm in your circle, but I have a right to be a complete jackleg.
Yeah, you have a right.
And you shouldn't have the right to take that away from me. So I can be who I am. Now, if you choose to have me in your circle, you need to look in the mirror and ask why.
But once again, see, I don't want to make this into victim blaming because I hear you.
Okay.
And you're not blaming the victim. I'm just saying that it can come to that because you allowed him in your circle, you shouldn't have done that. Now we're talking about victim blaming. And we've had so much of that down the line. Even when the tables are turned, where it's a man and a woman. The victim blame. Now, the mental health piece to that, what I'm saying to you is, there is no outline to that about going crazy and whatever else. And so that's why you do what you do. You do what you do because you choose to do what you do. And someone has allowed you, like you said, to do that in their space. And if you don't feel that good about yourself, then you're going to continuously do that.
Right.
They say the average woman will leave home 7 times before she actually leaves for good, if she makes that point there, you know. And the mental health piece to that is she's now got the baggage. I'm thinking about Ray Rice,
Right.
okay, and how her and her parents got on TV and talked about, like, what I wanted to know what was on her dad's mind, because there's just, I could see mom and daughter looking at that, some things they want to do, and they want to keep peace, and there's definitely some money under the table, I don't care, but there's some baggage that she has. When that money runs out, she's going to still have that baggage. She still has some emotional scars. Her dad is standing there going, yes, that's right, but he's not doing a whole lot of talking. But I can imagine that he is really not a part of this, but he's going along because they're going along, and it's going to bring some peace. But he still has to learn that he made a choice, and he made that choice because she allowed him to do that, and then married him. And the same thing with Brown and Rihanna. She couldn't understand what everybody was so upset about, and because she was gorgeous, beautiful, and talented, yet she could not see the fact that this was not normal behavior. And you do not have to accept this. And that he learned that, which his mother got on TV and said. He learned that in the home. If you leave, though, even after you collected the check, and even after you've been to the court, even after they done paid you off, if you fortunate to, with most poor women don't leave with no money, okay?
Right.
But they leave with a hospital bill if they live at all. But the bottom line is, after all of that, there's some emotional scars that now go into every area, through every child, through the dog. The dog is a secondary victim. That's why that's why domestic violence shelter out there has a place for you to bring the dog with you. The dog has a psychologist, okay? There's some kind of help even for the dog. Secondary victims are involved. So she leaves with baggage that she is sharing now with, I remember sharing some of my baggage with my students, and it wasn't that I told them my business, but my attitude, was there, where it affected students that I taught every day. Okay. And we do this every day. And so, and I say it affected them because they don't know if they did or not, but I'm pretty sure I wounded a couple of them from something that I said. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's the domestic violence piece, to the mental health piece to any domestic violence, sexual assault goes deeper than anything else. And what our people fail to know, and even people of color, especially where the disparity gap is, where we don't run to a counselor. We don't get those things. We don't talk with mistrust. We don't talk to any and everybody, not only in our own circles, but if they don't look like us, we're not going across town to talk to them either about what's going on with us. And so that's my point, that we can't keep blaming victims, but at the same time, the victim has a part in there where they have been a victim. And listen to this. I need, in my own self-transparency, my ex-husband, when it came to domestic violence, had nothing to do with me as a child, but my stepfather did, where I was abused. And so when he got me, I was already, just somebody to love me.
Right.
Just so somebody to love me. And if he treat me like this, well, I was treated like that at home, so this must be normal. And if this is what I get, then this is how I think about myself. So that all goes, I think, all in there also, Charles. Right. And Doctor, I just do. And so when they come to me, they come for bereavement counseling, and they come to the office, and before we're through, they're telling me about the abuse that they suffered, because they just want someone to talk to. All the years that what goes on in this house stays in this house did not. It affected every area of their lives. Until now, they need to talk to not just a pastoral counselor who's going to support, help them with support and biblically help them, and with the things and the tools that we, for coping and getting them to think things out. But then there's another line there that we know that we don't have that piece, and we want to refer them. If I can get that connection with them, then I can refer them. Right. So, and they trust me.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to say, and I think that's very important, is that with you being a minister as well as a counselor, that I think that connection is so important, because the one institution in our community, whether you're a Christmas and Easter Christian or not, but is the church.
Yes.
And so while many of our folks will have felt hurt by the church, especially many of our men, but still, as you said, being raised up in the church, you'll find people coming back. And I think that with individuals like you who are a resource, it gives those women and men, as you mentioned, a lifeline. Yes. That they can begin to see that, well, firstly, as you said, that they can talk about it.
That's right.
That it's not just something that needs to be kept under covers, et cetera, and something that they may feel is something just shameful.
Yes.
And that sense of shame is one of the other things that, you know, I'd heard you mention a little earlier, that keeps people quiet.
Yes, it does.
You know,
Yes, it does.
the other piece I wanted to touch on, though, as you were talking about blaming the victim, I look at the news at night and look at the status of women in not only in our society, but literally across the world. And while we can talk about us as African Americans having some reluctance to talk about domestic violence,
Yes.
it seems to me, and you've had much more exposure than I have, you know, with this, that it seems to me the way that women are often thought about in our society and in other societies creates, I don't want to say a permission, but a perception that of women being second class,
Yes.
of women being able to, if you want to call it, be commodities, being able to be either traded in and out.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and I've encountered in my clinical practice men in different cultures often feeling that, well, what's the big thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know if you've encountered that. I just
Yeah.
want you to touch on that a bit.
I think even with that, it's like I mentioned before, being this persona of what a male is, and depending on what culture you were raised in as a male, there's, for instance, there are some things men are not allowed to do, or women are not allowed to do in some cultures with their husbands. Speaking, and I found I found a couple of people today, in this day and time, not speaking with a bunch of men. You know how you tell children that, you know, get out, you know, you're not in this conversation.
Seen and not heard. Right,
yeah,
right.
and you got some cultures that do that. The wife, you know, might be able to sit there, but she can't say anything when men are talking. She's not in the conversation. So it depends on the culture and what the expectations are. Where are they, you know, if they're married. And that's a hard thing, too, for women who are American women marrying men of another culture, marrying island men or Indian men, or Indian men marrying, you know, trying to mix these cultures. And then you're talking about now the two different types of things where I think a man should look. This is what Daddy said the man's supposed to look like. And you're saying in your country, this is what women do, and this is what men look like. So now we got a bigger mess. So if you don't do like we do in my country, and I'm your husband, now we do what we do with the children. We spank you. We punish you.
So you got another. One of the things I wanted to do before we forget it, I know we got into the discussion about men being warriors, or some men, and many individuals may not think this is a good analogy, but if we think about us as people having African roots, many of us still have difficulties with that, but we know that the origin of man is from Africa, man and woman. Garden of Eden, from what my reading says, you know, was somewhere in Africa. But again, that's another what is it, program?
They say that's debatable.
But I wanted to say, in terms of the way that my understanding of warrior, and I think this may have been where Charles was going, is that of someone whose duty was to defend, to protect, to be there to guard the community against infiltrators, against individuals who would try to harm anyone in the community. And in societies, the warriors, or if you want to call it the warrior class, had standards, had rules, had
That's right.
were looked on in a positive way. So I don't want us to think only of the warrior. Sometimes as we think of it as just as pure aggression,
Yes.
but often the trained warrior was an individual who was able to have as much restraint
Yes.
in being able to know what was appropriate,
Wisdom.
what exactly,
Wisdom.
and be able to utilize himself
Yes.
to model the young people coming up in terms of what was acceptable, what was appropriate or
Yes.
not. Now, this may be an old-fashioned way of looking at warrior, but if you look at warriors within any intact society, you'll see that those were the individuals who were looked upon as the carriers of the culture,
That's right.
along with the women.
Yes.
So that's how I was
Yes.
thinking, in terms of warrior. But I think that we've lost a sense of what that is. And when we think of today, with many of our soldiers,
Yes.
we call many of them wounded warriors. And I'd like to think of many of our African American men, as wounded warriors.
Wounded warrior. Yes.
And the thing about a wounded warrior is that that individual can be as dangerous, okay,
Yes.
to themselves, or to the
I
community.
got you. Mm-hmm.
So we have I believe, a duty to work with those wounded warriors
Yes.
and to create some healing, for them, because they still have a purpose. They still,
That's right.
carry some importance with them. And so there's a saying that comes, from the domestic violence advocacy that talks about wounded people, wound people,
That's
or
right.
hurt people,
Hurt
hurt
people.
people.
That's right.
Okay? And in my working with many individuals who have been wounded, I also said hurting people also wind up to be hurting.
Hurting. That's right.
So to I hope complement your point that there are a wounded individual here and a hurting individual over here.
Yeah.
And part of what I see that we as healers need to do is to begin to heal both the hurter
Yes.
and also the hurting. And that's one of the difficulties. But I think the work that you're doing, and I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about what you do, I think adds to some of that that healing.
Yes.
First, before you answer that question, I got a text from my friend, and she told me to ask you, how do we put the abuse in the past, or do we as women carry this to the next relationship and look for the danger signs?
Very good question. First of all, the first part of the question is talking about how do we put it in the past?
Right.
You have to begin the healing process. You can't go back and change the past, but you can begin healing. And that healing, like I say, and it is, the research has found, disclosure is the beginning of healing. Being able to talk about it, being able to speak about what is going on, and that picture of that trauma comes in pieces. You're not going to ever get a linear piece to that. This happened, and this happened, and this happened. It's never going to come like that. It'll come in pieces, and especially when you're around in your 40s, that pieces start coming together of the trauma, but where you were stuck at, where this wound started. Things you had suppressed, things start coming to the top. Like gold, starts rising to the top, or anything that's what is that? Killings after you clean.
Okay, go
Okay, all that stuff come up to the top.
All
But when you're trying to clean them, but that's the that's the first part. You have to. You can't just go into a relationship and look to get healed while you're in a relationship. There has to be a time where you start the healing. Now, the healing is going to take over a period of time, and at some point, you can go into another relationship without having to reach back or taking stuff from there into that. But you first need that time. And so healing is a process. And just getting to know who you are and being able to pull that together. And I don't care, but if you have a good support system, like a good pastor or someone you can talk to about this, or a family that you can talk to about this, great. But most of us couldn't talk to nobody, even if it was in the family. So you really need to reach out for someone that you can talk to objectively.
Right, and I kind of had a conversation with her because I told her to look around her circle because she still has so much madness around her circle. And I'm like, these are old people that are still so dysfunctional. But also she recognized, she said, Charles, I went from one bad relationship and kind of duplicated the guy I was with in the first relationship. And I was like, wow. And so that was the second part of her question is, or do we as women carry this to the next relationship and try to look for the danger signs?
Not if you're working towards that. There still has to be that period. And so when you come, you'll know when you're ready to go into another relationship, because now you got some coping skills. If you've got the support, you've learned some coping skills. You've learned how to reach back into, if you have Christian values, you've learned to reach into that. You've learned to change your circle. You know, I mean, that doesn't mean you get rid and throw them, the baby out with the bathwater, because some of those in families have actually been the tapestry of your life. They have helped lay a foundation for you. As dysfunctional as that foundation is, but now you're able to see what you need to look for and what you need to change. You have to be ready for that. Okay, I'm ready to do this. And that means you're going to have to dig up some memories. The worst thing about disclosure is you begin to start in one place, and then even though you're talking about this, all of a sudden other things start coming. But when you find yourself releasing that even though it seems like a bad place, and I said worse, but the bad place, it actually gets easier to talk about it. And you're healed when you can mention somebody's name and don't get mad. If you still dealing with people and always say, well, I don't want to, because every time they do this and every time they bring their name up, I just get upset about it, then you're not healed.
Right.
See, and I have people say, well, I'm waiting on God to heal me. God is healing you. He's trying to show you how to be healed and what things it takes to help you get through the healing process. He's in that. He's in all of that. And so if we can get to that place, when she gets to the place where she can actually discuss it, talk about it, and then try to help somebody else, you have gone from survivor to thriver. You now can help someone else. And then you're not going to dare let somebody else be bogged down with that mess you just got rid of, because you don't have it anymore now. So you have become a new person. It's a renewing of the mind, Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Change your mind, you'll change your behavior.
Okay.
And
profound. One of the things that I wanted to ask you, and we're going to get to what your program is in a little bit, but as you were talking, the thought came up to me: where does forgiveness, come about in this whole process? That's one with a deep breath.
Yes, because people believe that that God healed me. The Lord, prayed and God healed me, and I've forgiven them. And that's why I said, if you can't talk about it, if you can't mention their name, if you can't be, you know, you don't have to be buddy with folk, but if it gets so uncomfortable every time, you know, just from normal things, then you have not forgiven. Dr. Tracy, Dr. Stephen Tracy wrote a book that, about the wounded heart. And in it, he talks about forgiveness. And I read an article that he had written, and that's what caused me to get the book, because I was so taken with it. The heart, the forgiveness piece, let's say sexual assault. Let's say sexual assault. Here you have somebody, and it might be in the family, and y'all go to the same church. You know, the families. But you've got this thing now, this is your dad or your stepdad. These things are starting to come to a head. And, or maybe you're not in the same church, but you're in the same family. Or you're somebody, a family member. Either way, what happens is, this person has now found Jesus, to put it like, or, you know, they have now found the Lord. That's happened with me regarding my ex-husband. You know, he, great Christian, head of the deacon board. You know, could have never, you know, at one time believed that, but that's what happened with him. So we can talk to each other and converse and laugh and talk, and I can call and check on him, and that's fine, because I no longer does that button, you know, pushing the button. When you have that type of relationship with someone that is still a problem, and they come to you, or the church says, you got to forgive them. Well, you know that. If you in the church, you already know Jesus died for your sins, and you must forgive just like he forgave you for your sins. Then we know that. But there's this thing still gnawing at me. And that's why when people tell you, baby, don't worry about it, just get over it. Oh, please. You know, that's the worst thing you can tell anyone.
Right.
Because it's not a matter of getting over it. And these are things that are embedded. And so when we sit down and tell people they must forgive, that's a process. And so allow them to, you know, minister to them and allow them to forgive. But don't keep pushing this person up in them and around them and whatever else, because God is going to work on all of that. And I heard someone say, Dr. Stephen Tracy said that the problem is when we come to him, well, with this individual, they come, and you got to understand, here's a male, most of them are women and are assaulted or domestic violence by a male. So here we come, and we want them to forgive, but you got to understand, they are told they have to forgive and they have to believe God and have faith in God. Remember, God has masculinity. So now you're talking about, here, the one here's somebody I could see that abused me, and now you're telling me that I must forgive somebody that I can see, but I can't, and believe in somebody I can't see. And most of the time, you believe, I believe God, but in the back of your mind, well, why you let that happen to me? See, but I don't want sister so-and-so or pastor know that, how I feel, because then they tell me I'm not spiritual. You see, and I don't want to hear that. So when praise songs go up and people are shouting and Bible, I'm just as spiritual as the next person. But inside, I'm wounded and I'm hurt. And now you're telling me I got to forgive. And then I'm saying, okay, Lord, I know I got to forgive. Then I must not be worthy of you, because I can't seem to get rid of this feeling. Because we don't try to push this on them when it's a process. And I think the church is very, and family, you know, it should be held to the, not accountable, it should be held to the place where they learn how this thing goes. So everybody ought to be pulled into an objective circle and say, okay, let's talk about this. Now, this is how she feels, and she's sat with me for 2 or 3 weeks. Now we need to do some intervention here, because y'all got to know how this sounds to her and what she feels, and that she is not, you know, or is not any less a Christian than you are. And that can be a problem.
You know, that is so important, because I've seen several women that I've seen in clinical practice who their woundedness in having been molested as a child or sexually assaulted as a teenager or in a domestic violence situation had their shame reinforced by often the same church community
Yes.
that they so much want to be a part of.
Yes.
And so what you're saying now, I think, is so important,
Yes.
that there needs to be an education,
Yes.
of the church. That, just as he said, that forgiveness is a process.
It's a process.
And one of the things that I like to say to folks that I work with, that yes, working towards forgiveness, is a positive thing, but don't forget.
Don't forget that you're working towards.
Exactly.
And you know what?
And not forgetting
Yes.
the impact of what that abuse has been in your life.
Yes.
What has happened to you, what you've gone
Yes.
through. Keeping that memory there so that you can reflect on it, but
Yes.
not be emotionally driven.
That's right.
Or have your actions driven by that. And so sometimes people get mixed up and think that if you forgive,
you forget.
that you're supposed
And
to
that's
forget.
not true.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're not.
Exactly.
And with that, if you step on my toe, yeah, I'm gonna forgive you right now. If you keep taking something from me, I'm not only gonna forgive you, but I know better than to keep setting you up for failure. Okay, because that's not gonna work. But now, when you talk about something that is chronic, that's been done to me chronically, something that's prevalent in my life and has embedded itself within me, that's not something that, oh, well, I forgive. And I remember saying that. I remember saying that, yeah, I forgive. And I remember hearing the forgiveness Sunday school lesson. And I was working in the church, and I got up out of the Sunday school class, the adult class, and walked to the office in the back and called my ex-husband. And this had not so much done with the domestic violence, but I also didn't like the abuse that he was doing with his youngest son. He was not taking care of him.
Okay.
So, it hurt, and I had to shut my mouth so the kid didn't hear me saying, I say, well, your daddy, sometimes, I want to go,
Right.
but I couldn't do that.
Right. You didn't want to add to
right.
that
But I
negativity.
got up and went to the phone. This Sunday school lesson was so important to me. And I called him and woke him up on a Sunday morning. And I said, I ask you to forgive me. And it shocked him. He said, what? I said, I want you to forgive me. I didn't even leave the door open that I forgive you.
Yeah.
Because he does, he was not a Christian. Then he didn't feel that he, from what I could tell, that he was guilty of anything. So there was no sense in going down that road.
Right.
But impacted him, and he told me years later it was because I called and asked him to forgive me. He said, I never forgot that Sunday morning. Because he said he couldn't believe, he told my daughter, who was, young woman at the time, he said, I'm still trying to figure out, what that was all about. What's your mother up to?
So you rocked his world.
Yeah. Woke him up on a Sunday morning.
Okay.
And then I went back to my Sunday school class.
Oh.
But it impacted me so much. I was so convicted. And those are the things that we have to understand, that for some things, forgive you for this. Some things we hold on, and we want people to forgive us, or we don't want to forgive people for, because we got some other issues going on. It's not really about that. It's about something else, and it probably has nothing to do with them at all. You see, that's okay. But when we talk about something as prevalent as domestic violence and abuse, now we're talking about something that affects the spirit, the soul of a person. And that's, you can wound their soul. You can change a person's outlook on life. This happy 4-year-old kid could wind up being a drug addict. You see that.
Exactly.
No straight A student, and all of a sudden, and why? Because for years he was being abused. He was being abused and couldn't talk about it, because that's not what boys talk about, and you don't want to tell anybody to see it. And shameful. Then all of a sudden the drugs and the grades start going down, and the drugs and stuff, and mom can't understand why. What's happening? So those are the things that we look at, and those are the things that come by me, and I don't have a license, but I have a pastoral certification to work with people, but I know my limitations.
Right.
And at that, but I'm always want to be a support, biblically, scripturally, and with the skills that I've learned as a pastoral counselor.
Wonderful.
But
Tell us
that's
a little
it.
bit, because I'm just watching our time and I'm just fascinated as we're talking here today. But tell us a little bit about how individuals, can get in touch with women to women global mentoring.
Okay.
And you also in what you do.
Okay.
Okay.
The organization, the parent organization is Woman to Woman Global Mentorship Network. And what we have two portions. We do social justice at the level of legislation on behalf of women.
Okay.
We have partners within the state, Planned Parenthood, and some other organizations, and we partner together when we're trying to see about legislation being passed.
Okay.
The grassroots effort is Rafa Soul Care and Empowerment Institute. That's under Woman to Woman Global Mentorship.
Okay.
And that's where we counsel with people. We act as an advocate in regard to helping them get some things done regarding sexual abuse or domestic violence. And even I got people to come to me for, who are just lost a loved one. So it's not limited to that.
Right.
But our area of concern mostly is that. I am located at 927 South Goldwyn Avenue in what used to be called Wilcox Mall.
Okay.
And it's now the Village Square. And my number is, and call it, 407-485-6673. Okay. And the whole idea is if you can just talk to somebody, you don't even have to tell me who you are.
Okay.
You just want to talk.
Very good.
That works. And sometimes I just say, well, you know what, something's going on. Let's talk for a minute, and if I can see let's talk later. We'll talk later, if I need to be somewhere else. But in any case, we want to make sure that you're safe wherever you are. I'm not going to hang up unless you tell me that you're safe. Not unless you tell me if you're talking about killing yourself or, anything like that. I need to make sure that before I hang up and tell you, well, let me call you back, I want to make sure that I'm not you don't feel as though I'm putting you off.
Right.
And that when I hang up from this phone, we're going to talk again, or that your needs are met and you are in a safe place mentally and physically.
Very good. Well, I appreciate, all of the wisdom, expertise, passion.
Yeah,
and
everybody see that.
That's it.
They say, ooh.
Right, and compassion that you've shared with us tonight. And we're going to have you back because there were so many things that you mentioned that I think we touched on them. And I was just so pleased that we also had some of our listeners, our lookers also, I think this was either Twittering or texting in.
Yeah.
And I encourage our listeners to do that. Charles, is there a number that they can text in or a way that they can get to
I put it up on the screen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because some of our folks may just not know that.
No, I put it up on the screen.
Okay, great. Well, with that, we're gonna have to close up shop, Reverend. And before that, I promised to let you know about Groundation.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that.
Okay. Well, Groundation and Groundation Day is a day that is celebrated by primarily Rastafarians. And it's a day when the Rastafarians in Jamaica had a visit. This was in the 1950s by Haile Selassie, then Emperor of Ethiopia. And it was thought that his visit to Jamaica, his having come, and touched the ground or the earth in Jamaica, had imparted the blessing, that would come with what they considered Haile Selassie to be, and that is a representation, of God, on this earth. So for Rastas, groundation means, coming, it's almost like, and I don't want to say that it's a direct analogy, but almost like what Easter is to us as Christians. So whether you are a Rastafarian or Christian or perhaps a Jew celebrating Passover, we wish you peace, we wish you success, and we wish you togetherness as we journey on through this life. And as we like to say here, that the journey is from me to you and from you to me, so that we can reach a higher level and a higher purpose. Good night.
Good night.